Hey guys, it's Charlie with the Flint Epping Network here. Today we're going to talk about spalling Obsidian and some of the differences that you might encounter and some of the different tools that you can use for spalling some larger stone. Here I have a steel hammer that we're going to be using. A lot of people say you can't use steel. I'm going to show you that you can, you just have to use a little bit different technique. We have some larger copper, solid, on down to some smaller stuff that we can use for our finer work. In this video we're going to show you guys how to spall Obsidian so you don't end up with a bunch of gravel. So let's get started. Alright, so here I have a piece of mahogany, kind of long and slender. First thing you want to do when you're starting out with a whole piece of rock, you want to try to envision what you would do with that rock. Looks like you could get 2 or 3 nice spalls running this way. But the problem is on this other side, as you can see, it's real narrow versus this side that's fat. So when we start taking flakes off this natural platform here, we're going to be taking off this material, so we're more than likely going to end up with one really nice spall that runs about like that. And as you guys can see, it is a nice piece of mahogany. We're going to see if we can work it down to something that can be worked into a blade. So for starting out, we're going to use the big solid copper. And when you strike these platforms, you're not striking them real hard, you're just kind of giving them a little pop. When you're working Obsidian, you don't want to work it like you would a flint. If you drive the flakes too hard, you're just going to split your piece in half every time. So we're going to just go ahead and keep working off this natural platform here. That seems to be the best way when you're working pieces down. Just try to find your natural platforms. So you can see we got a small spall there off of it. And like I said, when I started looking at more just taking this one piece and working it down to one really nice spall, and we'll try to get some bigger spalls off of it as we go. Now I'm going to step down to a little bit smaller billet now that we've reduced this down to a sizable piece. Alright, let's see what happened there. Alright, so you can see how it fractured up and kind of diagonal like that. Tells me that there probably was a crack in the stone already. Maybe it was one that I had put in. But nevertheless, even though we broke it, we can still get a couple nice pieces out of it. This is just really showing you guys how fragile Obsidian is when you're working it. You really got to be careful. Alright, so now that's still a usable spall. Decent size. Why don't we go ahead and trim that down a little bit. We're going to step down to even a smaller billet. Here's a 1.25" I picked up from flinteppingtools.com. We're going to go ahead and work this down, just some nice light hits here to trim the edges down. And I can still see, oh, it's gone now, but there was a little bit remains of that last crack from when it broke. So when you're working these, you want to try to work these ridges down. There's a nice easy, you can see that's a nice easy platform right there that you can work and just take that right off there. The trick is not to make things any harder than it needs to be. Alright, so now you can see after several hits now we took that rounder piece and we're down to something that we can work. Now over to this guy that had the crack in it. So with this, you can see it's real oblong, and the first thing you want to do is you want to get rid of any useless material. You want to just go ahead and just give that a nice couple hits. You're not painting a Picasso. Just give it a couple whacks like that. So now you can see we got all the stuff from the old fracture off. So now we actually have a decent spall to work with. And why don't we go ahead and we'll trim that down a little bit here that we got to contend with. what we're going to do is we're going to head take some flakes off of this way to create a platform running this way. You can see a couple hits there. It's a little shallow yet. Why don't we give it another? There we go. Now you can see there. You can see we got a nice platform. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to strike that straight down there. And maybe one more time. All right. So now we're getting it worked down. Strike this too heavy or too hard, you're going to end up just overshooting the flake and you're going to ruin your piece. If it was a piece of raw flint, you'd want to go ahead and just give it a good whaling, but with this you want to be real careful. Alright, so now that we've got this worked down to a reasonable piece, it was a shame we couldn't keep it all together, but that's just how it goes. And anybody that's been napping any length of time knows that you can't always have big pieces. See, we got a lot of nice natural platforms. So again, the first thing you want to do is you want to try to envision the direction you want to spall. You want the spalls to go this way, you want to try to take them this way, and a lot of times it depends on what you want. You want large spalls, or do you want to try to get a bunch of 5-6 inch spalls that are going to be useful for a lot of things? I usually opt to get the more spalls rather than the larger spalls. So for this one, we're going to switch and use a steel hammer. It's just a mild steel. And we're going to start out find us a decent platform. You can see that's kind of almost a 90 degree there, but I'm going to take a flake off, try to take this hump off right here just to get started. A lot of times the first flake you take isn't always the best, but it helps you get into the stone. If you're working out somewhere where it's sandy or you have some mud, so what you want to do is when you plant your stone in the dirt helps absorb the energy from the strike. If you are spalling this on concrete surface, what's going to happen is when you strike the stone, the energy is going to get to the concrete and it's going to turn around and come right back into the stone, and that's what causes you to get your spalls to split and a lot of undesirable effects. Sometimes you'll just end up with gravel. So what you want to do is you want to really make sure you're planted in the dirt in a soft surface. If you're spalling in a big pile of stone, you want to make sure you're being careful not to have it laying on other rocks. That'll give you the same effect as concrete. So I'm going to go ahead. Another trick is, I don't know if you can see, but I'll use my foot to kind of prop the stone when I strike it. And a rubber tennis shoe actually works just as well as the dirt. It's a little trick. If you're spalling something and it's a little bit bigger rock, you can place the front of your shoe up against where the spall's going to come off, and that'll actually act as support for that spall so that you get a better effect when you do strike the stone. So let's go ahead and start working down the stone. Like I said, just one light hit there just to take off that front face. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go on this natural platform right here, striking towards me to start taking off this face right here. And again, what we're doing is we're going to try to spall this going this way. We're just trying to get ourselves set up in a position that'll do so. So we're going to go ahead and take this spall, just a nice light spall, kind of what they call a cleaning spall. And that spall's got, looks like some surface cracks from when the Obsidian was formed. You can see, but it should be able to trim that up and be able to use it. We're going to turn the stone, and we're going to start trying to work our platform so that we can spall it in the direction that we had decided was the best way. All right, so you can see it's a nice spall of Obsidian there. And like I said, we're going to keep working, try to work that angle around so that we can start going the way we want to go. All right, that's a little thick. You can see It's got some thickness to it, but we can trim that up. I'm going to switch to my 1.5" copper. And it's important to have multiple size billets in your toolkit, because as you work rocks down, you're going to go to smaller tools. You're going to start out with your bigger stuff, and as you work down, you're going to work to your smaller stuff, and that's going to really be beneficial. If you overstrike this, you're going to just split it in half, overshoot the flake. You're going to ruin your spall, and you can do this with bigger billets, but it gets harder to control with the more weight. So you're really doing yourself a favor to have several different sizes. Alright, so now we're starting to get, you guys can see we're starting to get the spall going the right way now. We're going to just, this is a decent size. It's probably a 5 or 6 inch spall that we've been getting off of here. That's kind of what we're shooting for. So we're going to make sure that thing's planted in the dirt, like that. And then we're going to just go ahead and take one more. We're still using that natural cup of the stone, the natural platform, to take these spalls. All right, again, it's a little thick. We're going to switch to our smaller tool here. Alright, and that's another usable spall. Alright, so we're still using the steel. We're not quite small enough now. I don't think we're quite small enough now to switch the copper. A lot of guys actually do use some bigger copper, 2, 3, 4 inch pieces of copper to pop these Obsidian off, and it works fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Over the years, I've trained myself to use a steel hammer. So now we're going to go ahead and continue, see if we can pop another spall off there. Alright, that's still pretty thick. You can see there. And there's nothing wrong with switch to the copper. There's nothing wrong with having a little thicker spalls when you're spalling on a bigger piece. You just tend to have a little more waste. You tend to have a little more waste with thicker spalls. We're still working this cone right here. I really like the way you get a stone that's got a nice cone in it. You can work that cone, and it provides a nice platform 180 to sometimes 360 degrees around the stone. So we're just going to go ahead and keep working that cone, taking a pop there. A nice spall, had a little crack in it. See if we can get that out. Alright, a little thicker on that in there. Let's switch to our smaller billet. Alright, so you can see that. Alright, so we might be able to get one more spall off that platform. But when you're working bigger stones, try to use the natural platforms that are on the stone. Whole rock, just work off the natural platforms. Especially if you have a nice stone that doesn't have any cracks in it or any defects, just use what you got to get the spalls off. There's no reason to waste any kind of material. Oh, that's nice. That's what we're looking for right there. About 1.5 inches thick. Probably 6 inches long. A little bit of a cleaning spall there. So we're starting to get into where that crack's at now. So it's starting to give us some trouble. So we're going to flip the stone now. You can see that crack looks like it runs about that whole length. So there's two things you can do. You can either keep working and try to work this off, or you can just come back here and start working this whole face back here and try to work up to the crack, knowing that this is probably going to all be junk right here because of the crack. So always try to work with the cracks, not against them. All right. So this is a little big to be working on the leg, but that's why you want to have a nice big leg pad to work with. You can see our crack is right here. So we're going to keep taking spalls off of here going this way. Our plan changed a little bit when we found the crack. Wasn't able to spall it quite the direction we were thinking, but that's okay because we just switched it up and just go with the crack. So now that it's a manageable size, we can use our leg. So now I'm starting to get to that crack. You can start to see it come through this other side here. Alright, so now that we've taken almost all the material off of this side that we can, you can see that we're getting down to where the crack's at. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and tap this and just take this whole piece off. The crack's already there, there's nothing you can do about it. It's a shame to lose all that material, but that's okay because that's just what we're gonna just work around it now. So now you can see the crack. The crack was running this way, right here. You can sort of see it. I'm gonna go ahead and use that platform and just try to take the rest of that crack off so we can get the good material out. All right, so that first hit took the crack off, and then the second hit was Alright, so now we're getting down to a nice sized piece here that's probably going to split it in half and make two spalls. We might just trim it down and make one. So again, I'm still using all natural platforms. I'm just now starting, I'm going to switch to a little bit smaller billet here, go to the 1.5 inch. So now I'm just starting to make platforms for my strikes. You can see here, this is actually a decent platform, and ideally I'd like to take this, if I had a saw, I'd like to take this and cut this right down the middle, and it would actually give me two nice spalls. So I'm going to try to use this platform because it's actually set up perfect. If I strike it just right, I might actually be able to split this right in half. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to actually use my copper because copper is a little more forgiving with Obsidian. Now I'm going to go ahead and strike that about right there, about halfway up that platform, and I'm hoping that the shockwave will run straight across. We got a little bit of grit there. I think that's just on the surface. Hopefully that'll produce two spalls. So you can see kind of the way I'm holding it with my elbow out. I'm not holding it close, I'm kind of holding it out so that I can get a nice 90-degree strike right on that platform. Alright, so now that we've worked down the majority of that larger piece, we're going to go ahead and start trimming up some of these little chunks that we have. You can see that kind of just looks like a chunk that isn't very useful for anything, but with a couple hits you can make a platform just like that to drive this ridge off. Like I said, you want to be real careful with your swing. See, that's a good example. That's just what I was about to say. Some of the signs of overpowering are you're going to get an overshot. So the flake's not going to come off right off the ridge like you'd like. It actually is going to dive in, it's going to go up, and it's going to cut your piece in half. With Obsidian, it's very easy to do. And that's an example of just, you know, you've applied just the right amount of power when you strike a platform and your flake runs right to the end where you want it, and that's it. We're going to switch to another piece of mahogany here that I have. This is a little bit bigger than the last one. It is fairly flat again. So let's see what we can do with this. This one doesn't have a whole lot of natural platforms on it like the last one, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to take the steel again. We're going to head and try to take this front off and kind of, as you can see, we took off a cleaning flake and it actually made a decent spall. So now you can see this is going to be my next strike right here. It's a little steeper than you would want for a platform, but I think that I can use that platform to take some nice balls off. So let's see what we can do. First going to go ahead and just plant it on the leg. Another thing when you're working on your leg, what you want to do is you don't want to necessarily trap the flake right up close to where you're striking. When you're trying to get a flake or a spall to travel this whole length, you want to make sure you're trapping it towards the back so that you're giving the spall some room to travel. If you pinch it too close here, you're going to cause the spall to travel short. So we're going to pinch it towards the back of our leg. There it is. Alright, it did actually produce a nice spall, but it split in half. That's one of the downsides of using a steel hammer versus copper, is steel is more likely to split your spalls right down the middle. If you're using steel and you're consistently getting splits down the middle, it's probably just because you're using steel. Another reason that could be for your spalls that are splitting, even if it's splitting with copper or your steel hammer. See how mushroomed over my steel hammer is? What happens is you get a lot of surface contact on the stone, it causes spalls to split. Ideally, the smaller the contact area, like the hammer needs to be rotated, so I'm using this end to strike. I'll just end up cutting the handle off and re-welding it on the back side there, and then I'll be using this will be the top of the hammer, and that'll produce much better spalls. So if you are having spalls that are splitting, that's something you want to watch out for. Make sure that it's not your tools getting worn out or misused or mushroomed over. You want to make sure that you keep your tools in good condition. So now we got this spall here. I'm going to go ahead and switch to copper again now that we're getting worked down a little bit. Just take some cleaning flakes off there. You can see I'm still using the natural platform. Just working right up that edge. Just some nice light hits. Really just letting the tool do the work, not really putting a lot of power behind it. Alright, so now you can see we got that work down. Actually a pretty decent piece. Now that we got this piece, got a couple decent spalls off of here, it's actually turned out to be a pretty nice spall that'll make a blade. I'm gonna go ahead and keep working down this edge here. Now this is a platform I made earlier. I'm just gonna go ahead and work down that. So now that we've determined that we're not gonna get any really large spalls out of this one piece, rather it's probably just gonna become one large spall, we're gonna just go ahead and keep working it down. Still working that all the natural platforms around the edge. Haven't had to make any. So you can see we got some rough spots on the outside. A lot of times you can see you'll have a concave section, or you'll have from where it was formed some rough material. It's better to try to get that off if you can. So being that this is concaved here, if I keep working on this edge here, eventually this is going to get thin enough and it's just going to break right down the middle. So what I want to do is I want to start taking material off the top of this. You just want to keep working that so it's not thicker on one end. Alright, so you can see now I took some material off there, so now things starting to get the spall's starting to get an even thickness throughout. Now I'll go ahead and do the same on the other side. Alright, so there we have it. I got one spall worked down. That's probably a 10-inch spall. That'll make a nice blade. Alright guys, that's a little bit on Spalling Obsidian. Gives you a little bit of understanding on some of the tools you can use and some of the different techniques that might help you with Spalling Obsidian versus other types of stone. I'd like to thank FlintKnifingTools.com for supplying the copper, and I'd like to thank Flint Knifing Spalls for supplying the stone. If you want to see more videos like this, post them in the comments section below. Give us a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe. Till then, we'll see you.